your ass.
Oh my goodness. Way to start the show. There we go. Hey everybody. How's it going? Welcome back to the collective. I first off want to apologize for the delay and all kinds of things going on, but we're here, we're ready to talk. I really appreciate you guys changing the timings with me. It has been I really appreciate it. Let's put it that way. So I'm now crazy enough. I needed a new challenge in my life, so I'm going to run the collective on my phone from my car in a quiet neighborhood. It wasn't quite a second ago, but it is now. So, how y'all doing? How's it going for everybody else?
Good. This will be maybe one of your most legit ever potties. If you can nail all of that clickety clicks while we're doing this thing from your car,
Oh,
dude, it'll be
man.
epic.
You want to talk about clickety clicks? First
Okay,
off, people should be clicking the likes. They should be subscribing to the channel and hitting the notification bell because I'm getting pretty good at this so far. I haven't even just started, but
it's a home run already.
Before we get anywhere, Daniel Levante, afternoon, gents. How are we doing? We're doing good, I think.
Good.
Are you guys doing good? Hopefully.
Good,
Rob, man, really appreciate you joining us today. This is fantastic. And Matt, always good to see you.
Mm-hmm.
Glad you could join us. Any thoughts? Anybody got any things off the top of their head before we jump into a subject or a topic?
I always have lots of thoughts.
Yeah, I usually jump in at this point as well with like the one bajillion thoughts in my head, and I always try not to, but it always leaks out. So
what do you got?
I'm going to follow Rob's lead and say, I've got lots of thoughts, but do you have a topic?
Mm-hmm. Oh, I got a topic by all means.
Bring it.
Let's dive.
That way I don't say something dumb.
Like that's ever happened before.
Oh, it happens fairly regularly.
Okay. So, you know what we should talk about actually, because we haven't done it in a little while. It's actually a little bit of an issue that I've been having lately with some other friends. Is that there's a disconnect, I think, that happens, especially during either a period of growth or a period of development or a period of learning, where it kind of feels like you're leaving people behind, or maybe advancing beyond the capabilities that person has. Like, you know, when you leave for the military, especially, you come back home to your civilian friends after a little while, and it feels different, right? That connection isn't there anymore. You've learned you have new experiences, you have new things to kind of talk about, and it doesn't feel like that connection is there anymore. You guys experienced that before?
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah, that's a good thing.
Yeah, it's I also found when I got out of the military too that a lot of it was a complete different culture I jumped into too. So like went from soldier to civilian doing nothing to school to now chef to going back to school. So like during all those stages, there's people I left behind because it's just different situations happening, and you are growing too, but also a lot of people couldn't keep up with what I wanted to do either. So I had to like, okay, listen, I have to make a decision for myself. I had to make this hard call and say, listen, if you can't keep up or can't follow or don't agree with what I'm doing, I'm sorry. Like I have to take care of myself first.
Yeah, that's an excellent point, man. Like, so one, the civilian of the crowd here, right? So I won't relate this to military transition. But yeah, I mean, anytime you grow, right? Like we're becoming different people when that happens. And sometimes there just isn't, people on that same path, and it just becomes a difference of journey. Right. And I find it incredibly important to recognize that and know when to sort of cut ties if they're not going to kind of go on the same journey with you. Right.
Great thought. Shaun, you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah. Like I said, I think that's a good thing. And so I'll take it back to almost like a square one and state that your friends in the military or civilian world or whatever the case is, your friends that you're hanging out with today, maybe they'll be here 10 years from now, maybe they won't. If they're here 10 years from now, well, you're probably on the same path. But if they're not here 10 years from now, you're on a different path. And your path over the years may create enough of a delta so that when you next see them again, your first thought should be this: we're quite a bit different, but we're still friends.
Mm-hmm.
So there may be some commonality there on the level of friendship. It may not be as intense or as rich, perhaps, but within a few minutes, you should start to feel that friendship again, that richness start to develop pretty quickly if they're a real friend. But that's that time when you go back and see friends from maybe 10 years, 20 years, 30 years ago, whatever the case is. If it's not a big difference, you just haven't pushed yourself hard enough, or they haven't pushed themselves hard enough. There should be a massive difference over a period of 10 years, in my opinion. And by the way, not only is that a good thing, it's a good thing for both of you. It's a good thing that you've led a life that has taken you in enough of a delta to see a difference. But it's also good that they see that and they can learn from it, and you can learn from them on the two maybe different trajectories that occurred over a period of time. I think it's good, man. It's almost mandatory.
Yeah. Do you guys think that there is perhaps a point in time, like we were saying earlier, or that Matt was saying earlier, but sometimes you just need to cut ties, right? Where it is either the relationship is no longer there, or there is a distinct delta between what people believe in at periods of time in their lives, versus, do you think that the friendship could be re-nurtured, or do you think it may be just the fact of separation that allows people the maybe the benefit of time to start seeing a different view, but then could either come back or, like you said, Shaun, show a way forward together? You guys get the question? What do you guys think? Matt, I'm going to put you on the fire.
Yeah, I think it all depends on your friendship and relationship that you're in, right? Because there's some people who you have to cut ties, like you're holding me back. And then there's some friends where it's like, yeah, you're holding me back, but I'm still your friend. I'll still be there for you, but I'm going this way and you can keep on going the way you're going, right? But we'll always cross paths throughout our lives, right? There's those rare friends and those rare people that you will always cross paths. And I find that a lot with the military too, is that in what Shaun was saying, that you can come back to your friendship and like in 10 minutes, you're like, yeah, back to, hey, this is the way we were 20 years ago. But then after that intersection happens, then you're back on your own separate paths. I think those are worth nurturing. I think those are the ones you want to keep within your, I want to say portfolio, but you know what I'm saying. But the other ones where they are trying to hold you back or they're trying to stop you or intersect you, yeah, cut those out and keep on going your own path. It's a hard thing, but never be sorry about loss or sorrow or separation of an individual, right? Because you have to keep you on your path and your way.
I like that. Rob, you got thoughts?
Yeah. I think both Matt and Shaun said some key words there, right? So, Matt, you said it depends. I'm a big fan of the word depends, because it's sometimes complicated.
I'll be with you in 20 years, just saying.
Yeah. Right? and then Shaun, right? Like, I think the key phrase there is real friends, right? Like, there's kind of a, we as humans get into this sort of situation where we surround ourselves with people. Obviously, we're a social animal. And depending on how that relationship is, are we talking about a friend that is just the timing is not on their side, right? Like, they're not at that point in the journey where they've learned the lesson that they need to learn to grow for themselves. But then there's also those that we sometimes in bad times surround ourselves with that are just pure toxicity, right? And we have to be able to honestly recognize that and understand that the cutting of ties, no matter what, should be a good thing if you're choosing to actually truly cut the ties to something toxic. And at the same time, knowing that real friends will never judge you for any length of time that sort of transpires between meetings, because it doesn't matter about that time, right? So you're never sorry either way if you're doing it right.
I like that. Shaun, you got anything to add to that?
Yeah, just the way it's kind of worked for me. I've had people ask me in the past, hey, what about your friend from like 35 years ago or whatever? Do you ever stay in touch with him or her or whatever? No, I don't. This is how I've been all my life. This is what works for me. It doesn't work for maybe anyone except me, but I let people ebb and flow in and out of my life. I don't hang on too hard. And the only time I'm pushing away is if they're a goof, if they're toxic, a loser. I'm just not into it. And so I've had lots of people move in and out of my life, some really, really cool people that I hope I bump into again. But I operate through an ebb and flow process. I don't force the universe too hard. I just let it do its thing. I try to interact with it as much as I can, but I can't force it, so I just let it happen. And it just kind of has worked for me. I haven't had to work too hard to be comfortable with the amount of friends that I've got at any particular point in my life. But then again, I'm really comfortable with myself as an independent organism. I don't need the planet, but I'll take it if it wants to hang out and be cool. So that's kind of how I feel in respect to friends. Now, I'm not talking about my family. I'm talking about friends. The other piece that I just want to add to that, so that's how I run my game. I don't force it. I just let it in and out of my life as it wants. But the piece that is a negative to that, I will say, or not a real benefit, is because I let it ebb and flow, and because I don't force it. I am not the guy that usually reaches out to people and says, "I got your 6 o'clock. I got your back. How you doing? How you making out, man? I haven't heard from you in a while." Because I'm not the guy that usually people keep connecting with and saying, "How you doing? How you doing? How you doing?" Because maybe people just think that I'm okay, and that's okay. I don't need anyone. Please, nobody hit me up 1,000 times today to see if I'm doing okay. I'm doing okay. What I'm saying is that I that's something that I don't do, and I think I might have to do a little bit more of it. In my live IG chat yesterday, someone had made a mention. In fact, I think it was Magnus Thornton had used a phrase of "check that 6" or "I got your 6, I got your back," that whole thing. And I know it's a bit of lip service to some degree in the mental health space. So "I got your 6," because it becomes a little. It's in every single paragraph. It's in none of my paragraphs, except from time to time. And so I think what I've got wrong is maybe my balance. I need to dial up that rotary dial at least 1 or 2 notches to maybe do a little bit more of "check that 6" for some people out there,
I'm actually similar to you on that respect, Shaun. So like I just had I was talking to a friend that, we've been lifelong friends at this point in time, right? By comparison to how long we've lived. And we're like that. Like, I mean, we're that type of friend that once we connect again, it could be years since we've kind of crossed paths again. But in our conversation today, it was one of those things where it just struck me. Like, it's when you make those reminder statements like, "Hey, I know we both know this," right? But like, no matter how much time goes past, that's not a reflection of my thoughts or feelings towards that person, right? Again, if they're the right kind of friend. But I do believe it's something that we could be a little bit better at, is that, get out of our own head a bit sometimes and just do our buddy. I'll use the military phrase, like do buddy checks, right? Just to make sure. And I've had that same experience that you have. Like, I've generally got my head pretty screwed on straight, so not a lot of people worry about me. So there's not a lot of that incoming to remind me to do it outgoing,
Yeah.
That's a great point.
It's tricky, and I think that there's a pretty standard issue, not expectation, but there's a cultural vibe out there where we're all supposed to be doing a lot of buddy checks on the regular. At least that's kind of the theme that I hear fairly regularly. But again, I'm not the buddy check guy, and I'm going to ask you guys now, instead of me guessing that I'm doing it wrong. I probably am. I'm going to ask you guys, how do you feel for each one of you, what the right balance is for you individuals on doing buddy checks?
Let's put Matt on the fire first, and then I'll jump in after.
Thanks, for me, it's personally, I'm the buddy checker, not the buddy checkee. Like, I'm the one who checks on people to see how they're doing. Like, I get a bad vibe. Like, when Chance, you and your 20-kilometer rucksack march there, like, next day, I was like, "Hey, do you want to go for beers? Like, what's going on, dude?" But I'm the person, if someone says, "Hey, how you doing?" It's like, "Yeah, I'm good. Carry on." Like, I don't get buddy checked. And I'm cool with that, because I have my own problems and I deal with my problems myself, my way. And normally it's very successful. If I need help, I'll reach out.
Yeah, I was just going to say, if it ain't feeling cool, hit me with a DM. But I need to ask you a little bit more detail. For me,
let's go.
My original question was, how often do you do it? Like, I don't know if I'm doing it enough. So I don't want you to nail the number perfectly per day or per week, but generally, are you fairly frequent or no?
1.62 times a week. No.
So you've got me beat by 0.2.
Yeah, it's that dang 0.2, man.
I kind of get an answer, right? I kind of get to answer your question. I get a feel, and that's pretty much like I respond to what I see and what I observe from people, either being online or personally, or like in the kitchen. We have an individual who's just having she's double shifting herself, right? Like she's got a job at work and then she's got another job, and she's being a parent at home, and she's burning herself out. And every couple of days she comes in and just like blah, like, death warmed over on the face, and it's like, hey dude, like, I'm just checking in. How are things? And it's just a feeling. She didn't say anything. She didn't do anything. I just respond to other people's body language, speech patterns, and social online behavior sometimes.
I do the same thing. In fact, I was kind of talking about that today in my live IG chat. So that's interesting.
Yeah. For me, I'm pretty different than I guess all of y'all, but I check in with people a lot. I'd say if not once a day, probably once every 2 days at the very minimum. Sometimes I'll just realize that I haven't talked to anybody in 2 or 3 days, and I'll reach out to a dozen people, even just with a, hey, how's it going? And I do that specifically, one for me. Right. I like talking to people. I like reaching out to people. I like discussing things. And I've checked in on Matt a couple times. I've checked in on all kinds of people.
Dude, you never check in on me. What the heck?
See, and this is the thing. I do check on you. You just, we talk every day, so it's kind of different. But the point I was going to make was the fact that it's partially for me because I like to talk to people, but I've actually talked to other people who have said that those little check-ins, those little reminders of, hey man, how's it going, have hit them at the exact right time, right? They've just been sitting there doom scrolling Instagram or, feeling horrible or looking at pictures of back in the day when they were in the Army with all their buddies, and they get a little message from Chance that says, hey man, how's it going? And it's that little check-in that it makes everything okay again. Right, somebody does care about me. Somebody does actually want to engage with me. And that has helped them move forward with their own journey, their own path. And it's almost a throwaway movement. It's not, because I care, and the people that I'm reaching out to I actually want to hear from. But it takes literally 3 seconds, right? Quick message. You know who I haven't talked to? And this happens a lot to me too, actually, where I'll be watching a movie or a TV show, or I'll hang out with somebody, and I'll get a reminder of 15 years ago, I was hanging out with this person at this time doing something similar, and be like, oh yeah, I haven't talked to that person in like 10 years. And I'll send out a message. Hey man, cool. Just thinking about you today. That kind of stuff. So I think both are valid. Actually all of the different styles are valid. And that I think depending on who you are, and as Matt said, sometimes you're the checker without being the checkee. Sometimes you're just living your life on your own. Sometimes you're in a really rough spot that you get a message and says, hey man, I appreciate you. I miss hanging out with you. We'll talk soon. So that's where I'm at.
Okay. So now I got a follow-on question. So all of that said, I got no issues with any of that. I think it's pretty cool. But you guys know my deal. You know what I'm like. You kind of know who I am. And so I'm not sure if I'm the right guy to just randomly reach out to some guy that I hardly even know. I'm not talking about reaching out to good friends, which I actually don't do very much of. I'm talking about there's people who know me through social media. I know them through social media. We've never met. And I'm not sure if I should be jumping into someone's DM and just saying, hey man, how you doing? Though they're maybe a 20-year-old kid who's got big dreams, but they just blew their push-up test or whatever. Or it's a 45-year-old guy who I barely know, but he seems to be struggling. And, who am I to drop into his DMs? So I'm not sure how much I should be getting involved in those kind of things, or, do people do that? I don't know. I don't.
No, I think the key on that one is the fact that whether it's a throwaway movement or not, right? Like if you actually care enough to which I know you do, right? And I
That
mean,
would be the only way I would even type the first word. You know what I mean?
100%. Is that for you though? That's an engagement,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you're going to talk to somebody and be like, "Hey man, how are you doing?" You're going to find out what the issue is. You're
Yeah,
like,
I'm
okay, like
initiating. Yeah.
there's a direction to it.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas I think the way I'm doing it is I'm kind of keeping it open ended in that, hey, like if you want to talk, it's just a reminder, like I'm here
Oh, yeah, that makes
and
sense.
I'm thinking of you. And I think that's where the difference lies. And again, not one way is better than the other, but
No, it's a great
I believe
distinction. That is what's happening.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I think that's really where it is. Now I got a couple comments here. Any thoughts on any of that from Rob or Matt?
I would just say I agree, like you said, on that one, Chance. I'm kind of a mixture of both, right? Like, I'm very in tune with a lot of like my close circles. Like I understand their behavior baseline, right? So anything that kind of goes off that track is a warning sign for me that maybe I should be engaging with that person, right? Like my joke rule of thumb is that sometimes I'm terrible at communicating. So if someone's communicating worse than me, there's something going on, right? Like there's something I need to maybe inject myself into, kind of deal, to make sure they're okay. But at the same time, it's, that question of, do I know them? Do I not? This whole social media aspect of the landscape, right? It has to be genuine. Or it can actually go wrong if it's not, right? Like you might be checking in on somebody on the worst day of their life. And if you're not genuine, it's not going to help the situation to a degree, right? Yep. People see that, they know it, right? So
that's a great point. And you have to be ready for it.
Mm-hmm.
That's the other part, right? Like if it is the worst day of your life and you just check in like, hey, how's it going? And aren't ready for them to come back, I am in a hole and I need help. And if you're not ready to get that answer, you're not doing anybody any favors at that point in time. So
that's how I look at it. And it's not just a case of if I'm not ready for the answer or their answer. For me, in my brain, how it works is I need to not only be ready for whatever they're about to hit me with, I best have some freaking solutions, like on my Rolodex, right next to my hand as I ask the question. I don't pull the pin out and just juggle the grenade. Like I've got my plan before I reach for that pin. So to me, it's no small undertaking when I DM someone, say, "Hey man, how you doing?" Because it's going to go somewhere. And yeah, you're right, Chance. You're right on that.
That makes a lot of sense. Matt, you had a point?
Yeah, for me, it's maybe selfish for myself, but I think of people, it's kind of like acquaintances, friends, and family, right? Acquaintances, on social media, never met you, you're somewhere around the world, we chit chat, okay, you're an acquaintance, right? If you need help, you reach out, yeah, I'll help you, but you have to reach out to me. Friends, I'm watching friends, I see friends, it's like, hey, you're having a rough day, how can I help? Or, what's going on? Again, what Shaun said, I have solutions, I have problems, but I'm also going to set them. That's kind of like, hey, this is your problem, but here's some solutions, you have to go solve it yourself, kind of thing, right? We're family. I mean, I'm in their elbows and knees and let's go, right? I mean, you're messing with my family, and it doesn't have to be blood family. That's like people, friends who've got themselves into that me familia level, right?
Mm-hmm.
We're taking names and stuff if we have to, but bring a shovel kind of jazz, right? But acquaintance, friends, and family, and that's how I kind of like judge on where my involvement needs to be with individuals.
Those are good concentric circles, and it's good to have boundaries. There's no doubt about that.
Very good distinctions, yeah. Rob, you got any thoughts before I hit these comments?
No, I hit the comments, man. I think the juice has been said on that one.
Okay. So Carl hits us with fully agree. It's been a whole new world and also feels like new relationships, even though I've known my friends for a long time. This came in when we were talking about reintegrating or jumping back in with friends from back in the day. And I like how he says it feels like new relationships, because they are new relationships, because you're a different person at this point, right? You're no longer the same person that you were 10 years ago, 15 years ago, hopefully. Or that is the idea, but I like that they feel like new relationships. And I think it's because they are.
Yeah, and preceding that, he states it's like a whole new world, which is far more critical than looking at your friends in a whole new way. Because whether you've got friends or not, move that off to the side because it's not about the friends. It's about stepping into a new sunny world. You know, as you were reading that, I was hearing birds chirping, pal, literally through your window. And that's what someone should be experiencing. Like if they're stepping into a new positive space, like they're going to make a change where they want to be more awesome. You don't, in your mind's eye, you don't step into a whole new dull world. You don't step into a whole new foggy world. You step into a whole new brighter world, a whole new sunnier world. I mean, that's what happens when people engage in a positive forward momentum. And so new relationships, old relationships, no relationships, you don't know anyone in the world at this moment, unimportant. If you're stepping into a whole new world, a sunnier world, the rest will take care of itself.
I like that. Rob or Matt, you got any points on that?
I would just, spit out sort of a small like agreement with Shaun on that, right? Like, I mean, plants don't grow in the dark, right? So like if you're going to go through some sort of growth, it should be in a positive way, right? Not to get yourself closer to the pit in the ground kind of deal. So
that makes sense. Matt, anything to add?
No, we're good, buddy.
Raj. Okay, so Daniel then states, definitely agree with Shaun. I'm very similar when it comes to friends, as you were describing, the fact that you just kind of ebb and flow and allow things to come in and out. But he goes on to point this out, that forwardness to doing the check-in message is something I definitely lack. And I don't think it's a question of lacking or gaining. I think it's just, your own way. And like we were talking earlier, it's more about, if you're doing it for the right reasons, then do it for the right reasons. If you're not doing it, if you're just doing it because you think you should be doing it, maybe you're not doing it for the right reasons.
I will say, though, that I like Daniel's mindset. Whether he's right or wrong is unimportant. The mindset, as I see it, and it's just exactly what I did with you guys just now, and that is ask you if I think I'm doing it right for me, but I'm not sure if I am. And that's why I always have someone cold eye review my trajectory on this mission. And so as I read Daniel stating that, Chance, your point is correct in my opinion, but Daniel asking himself the question is the way to run your program, is to question whether you're doing it right or not. Can you do it better? Can you pattern interrupt yourself? Can you adjust the trajectory by yourself or with acquaintances who will give you advice? And calibrate yourself as often as you can.
Yep, absolutely. Now, here's the next question I have for you guys, at least within the same concept. Let's say you have friends that they're friends that are trying to do more, friends that are trying to do better. They're trying to, move to do more awesome, as we like to say. But they keep falling into the same patterns over and over, and they keep going. They'll, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, and they never really gain either the time or the experience or the depth of knowledge to move beyond where they're stuck. How do we help them? How do we engage them? Or do we help them? Do we engage them? Do we just let them figure it out on their own? Do we give them tools? What are you guys' thoughts? How do we engage that? Rob, I'm going to put you on the fire.
Yeah, that's fine, man. I think that one's difficult. So for myself, right? Like there was a big period in my life where I was that person, right? And I can tell you at least from my experience and what my mindset was at the time, you could give me all the systems. You could give me all the outlets, all the learning and all that sort of stuff, but I wasn't ingesting it truly. Like I could read a book, but I wasn't, really hearing it or feeling it kind of deal. So again, it kind of goes back to a timing, right? And then it's where it gets muddy, using your words, Shaun, like, was I being a goof or was it not the right timing? Right. And it was always very precarious with me. I had a lot of mentors around me that were all like never gave up on trying to provide those resources or those pathways out of that. But there came a day where it finally clicked. Right. And I have to kind of question, had any of my mentors decided to cut ties for a period of time before that happened, right? Like it would have been disastrous for me. So luckily enough, there weren't those people that cut ties. So like, I get mixed, right? Like, I think it comes down to knowing the person that you're dealing with and knowing, intimately, like, are they actually applying, but just, for the time being, they're kind of falling on their face in whatever sort of lesson they're learning, at which point you just try to keep reminding them of the things that are helping you that they could maybe apply. And then there's, again, you get to that point where maybe this person, it's not about timing. Maybe it's about like their self-actualization journey is just like, I don't want to do any of this. Right. So I think it's all about knowing the person that you're dealing with, to be quite honest.
I like that.
So when you're speaking about your mentors and how, you're grateful that they stuck with you and whether they stuck with you for the long haul right until you crossed the finish line and became large and in charge, or whether they bailed on you halfway through, I suppose is unimportant in respect to the point that I would like to make. And it's this: the time that they put into you was not wasted. Now, they may think it was.
It wasn't, man.
I know that. But they may think it was. But it wasn't. And now we know it wasn't. Because what you are is a prime example over several paragraphs of a guy who may or may not know whether his mentors do or don't like him right now, which again is unimportant. The fact remains, you cross the finish line, you're in front of the microphone, you're saying good things, you've learned some lessons, and their time spent with you is now magnified because you put it all together, made the right determinations, and now you can talk about it in a righteous manner.
Like that. Matt, you got anything to add?
I guess it goes back a little bit to the whole, you got to help yourself before you can help others, right? So if you have that friend who is taking 2 steps forward, 2 steps back, right? You can't allow that to hold you back as a mentor or as a teacher or instructor, right? Maybe by you improving yourself, maybe that will be that next little kick in the butt to get them going as well, right? Even if it falls apart and you're like, we got to part ways, so like I'm delting it, right? You've learned, yourself as a mentor has also learned, this is what may happen. This is how I reacted to it. This is how I could have done it better. This is how the problems I possibly created, right? But I'm also one of those people who will never give up on a person if they're trying to as well. Like they can fail 600 times and I'll be there for 601, right? But if they start dragging themselves down and dragging me with them, then I'm going to have to cut ties. And if you want to get back on the boat and get back in the game, yeah, I'll be here. Contact me. But I have to take my path now, right? And I've learned that very, very hard lesson in the past myself, is that I had to cut ties from somebody because I was being dragged down to places where I couldn't go. So,
but that's it's a very interesting point, because I was thinking of my own experience as well, and the fact that I had lots of people try and tell me certain things or try to show me certain things, and I didn't pick up on it until long after I had failed miserably. You know what I mean? Like I had to get my butt kicked before those lessons made any sense, right? Before the little pieces of information that they were trying to get through finally sunk in. It wasn't until 3 or 4 steps down the road of getting my clock clean. And I think that I wonder about it too, is that had I been open to it, had I been successful in integrating that information in my time of life, I would not be here. Right. So I find it quite interesting in that there's a lot of time that we spend thinking, I can't say a lot of time, but there's times where we think, oh, well, had X happened, Y would be better or not. But it doesn't really matter because we're here right now. So the key thing is I learned, I think, and I evolved. But I guess my question comes back to the point of, we want to help others, right? We get to a point where we feel that we are capable of passing on some knowledge or being a mentor or being able to give some answers or be ready to have a plan, or, as Shaun was saying earlier about if he was to call somebody there, he'd want some sort of plan of action right away. so I guess really my struggle with this is knowing when that is required and when you kind of just got to step off and be like, well, that's going to hurt. I'll see you on the other side. And then, yeah, we got any thoughts on that before I got another comment here. So just wanted to check
real
in.
quick. I've said it in the past, and I think it could be carved in stone. It's the right guy at the right time with the right message. Now, there's 3 variables that rarely come together at the appropriate moment. But when they do, it works magic. And where the real magic works, in my opinion, where it may not have worked for any of us in the past, is it might have been the right time, right guy, right message. But then the last R, which is the 4th R that I always state, is I've got to respect them. I don't care who's standing in front of me with all the magic words. If I don't respect you, I ain't hearing it. In fact, if I don't respect you, or worse yet, if I'm like disrespecting you because you're definitely not the guy to be delivering this message, then I'm kind of working against the message. And so, like all things in life, it's got to be the right vibe at the right time from someone who is cool. And I've had that happen for me in the past. I've done it for others in the past. And once you've seen it done and once you've done it enough, it's a pattern. It's so easy to see and it's so easy to do, but you've got to pay attention to the vibe for sure.
Well, Shaun, I mean, you use the word respect. I mean, similarly, so I guess I lump it all under an umbrella of trust, right? And, I look at it like this. I will give somebody, again, because I was given many chances in my life, right? I will give somebody the chance. But it kind of goes back to those cliche phrases of like, you're only as good as your last game, right? So if you develop a pattern of like, okay, you're always asking for help, but you're not doing anything about it. Like, I can't trust that you're going to do something, and vice versa. Like, if you don't trust me, then me reaching out to you to say like, hey man, I care and all that sort of stuff, it's going to fall on deaf ears. And to your point, Shaun, and this is what I was hinting at earlier, where it goes the wrong way, you might actually reject wholeheartedly the message coming in. And not only just reject it, you will adopt the converse.
For sure.
Because the trust isn't there. So automatically I have to do the opposite thing. Right. And that can be damaging.
Yeah, for sure. I think everyone's got a little bit of contrarian in them to some degree. And, like in the past, just the wrong word with the wrong tone, just one word, that tone has flippity flopped me into, oh, now that's it. Things just radically changed. Because of the frequency, because of the vibe. I don't need to hear the rest of the paragraph. I've already got my read and I'm flipping. So it's really important when I find this to be true. In the past, when I was communicating with people as a coach, most of it was email. I'd only communicate with them on the one-on-one when I was at races or whatever the case is with them, etc. But now in this social media world, this digital world, this one that we're in right now, communicating with each other, people who are going to be watching this later or watching this live now, I'm doing my best to try to communicate in a more with many levels rather than just typing an email and hitting send and hoping that hits home. I'm trying a bunch of ways to do this so that it's positive for everyone. And I suppose at the end of the day, that's all that matters. Even though I don't have much figured out, I'm just trying to do the right thing. And I think that just trying to do the right thing is often almost enough. The rest of the minor details is, the right tone, the right respect, the right guy, the right time, etc.
Do you think that comes with experience as well? Because I know that, like, when I first started getting into advocacy and started helping other veterans and started trying to assist people, my first thought was, I got it all figured out. Now I can pass on all the information, which I didn't have it all figured out in any way, shape, or form. But I think the key thing that I realized over time was that it really matters that you are putting down the right vibe, as you say, Shaun. But what ties into that, I guess, is It's more along the lines of the desire to actually help, because there are a lot of people say they want to help, but it is a lip service. It is they don't know what that actually entails. They just say, I want to help. It's actually similar. We were saying this the other day, was everybody wants to do gangster stuff until it's time to do gangster stuff. It's kind of the same, right? If you want to help somebody through a mental health break, or a mental health issue, it's not easy, and it is not pleasant, and it's going to get bad, and you're going to have to deal with it. And you're going to have tools available. You're going to have these things available. You're going to have plans, and so there's all of the information that you need as well. But the willingness to go through it and understand that what it's going to take, I think that's a big part of it, because it's not as simple. You mean, Shaun, you know this from mentoring and coaching. Not everybody wants to hear the message that you're trying to get across.
Yeah. So go find someone else, because I'm going to tell you what you need to hear. Plain and simple. Whoever, line them up, all 1 million of them, one after the other. I'll tell them exactly what they need, whether they like to hear it or not. Now, my problem is I don't have all the answers. I just do my best. And sometimes I don't nail it out of the park, but I get it reasonably close, so that then even if I crack it past third base or some other goofy baseball analogy, someone can start running now. Go run the field. Go do your best, but at least I'm going to calibrate you towards first base. So me, I don't have much of this stuff figured out. I'm still trying to figure out how to do this mission. I feel like I've just got my blue belt, and I'm heading towards my black maybe before I die. At least I'm going to scrabble my way, best effort towards it. And until then, I'll make mistakes, but it'll always be with the best intentions of just trying to do it righteously, I suppose.
That's a great point. Any other thoughts on that before we shuffle on? Okay. Daniel's got an interesting question here that I wanted to put up. So it says, finding a voluntary opening of that person and wanting advice by asking them how their growth process is going. And I've been kind of reading this last couple minutes here as well as, but I'm wondering, do you think this is the best way of going through it? Do you think that
it's
the
one
little
of
check
1 million.
1 of 1 million? Okay.
It's just one. If you know how to communicate with another human being in 1 million ways, then it's just one way out of 1 million ways that you can communicate with a human being. This sentence is great. It's having the other person take ownership through blah, 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 whatever, all of the strategies, etc. But it's just one way of 1 million ways that it can be done. Now, why I say that is because the important distinction, at least for me, is this. If you've got a few tools, your job is not to throw all the tools on the table in front of the person. Your job is to ascertain what's going on in the real time, feel it out, whatever you want to call it, but get right with what's going on as the questions or the challenge or the puzzle or the problem, and start using some tools that are appropriate at that time. And this is a tool of 1 million tools, depending on how long you've been in the game.
I like that. Rob or Matt, you got anything?
I'll let Matt go if you've got somebody.
Yeah. So yeah, what Shaun was just talking about, cultivating information, making sure that they're getting exactly what they want and when they want it, right? Not overwhelming them with too much information. Totally agree, buddy. I mean, that's when I started doing the coaching thing, like the health coaching thing. That was I threw everything in. Here's what you can do, and people would just get lost, right? So breaking it down to chunks that actually needed for them in the moment, that was the biggest lesson I've learned, trying to figure out this out too. I think finding a voluntary opening that's kind of the action is on you to find that moment. But I disagree with that. I think telling the individual or person that you are open, not that they are open, right? So that they can come to you when they are ready with their questions. I think that is more valuable even just for someone who's like, hey, you know what, I want to crush this out on my own, but I have this asset on the side if I need, right? Or I'm going down this problem, but I know this guy's here if I need, ask a few questions. I think that's more valuable than saying, hey, I noticed that you're doing this and I can help, and this is my toolbox. I think it's a mind space kind of thing.
I like that. So then it begs the question of, it's kind of a chicken before the egg kind of deal, right? Is, do we wait for people to reach out? Do we reach out to them? And I know from my own struggles, the times when I was in my darkest areas, one of the hardest things I could possibly do was to reach out to somebody else and invite them into the difficulty that I was dealing with, right? And so we say this a lot. You hear it a lot in the veteran space, you hear it a lot in the mental health space across the board is, if you're struggling, reach out. But if you're just struggling to hold on, if you take this as an analogy of like trying to hold on to a cliff face, or, if you were climbing and you were just struggling to hold your fingers onto the wall, letting go of the wall or reaching out to do anything else seems counterintuitive. And so I don't like using the word onus, but is the onus on those that want to help versus the ones that need the help versus, you know what I'm saying? Like there's this kind of line that shifts and flows. Maybe it's a spectrum.
There's a middle point if we're talking about spectrums. Anyone guess what that might be?
Well, that's what I'm asking. Anybody?
We're on it right now. So the middle ground being that we're handing out some advice, but we're not forcing it down anyone's throat.
That's a great point.
We're also not advertised in Times Square. So if someone wants some advice, they can come and find us at this point. So if someone's seeking help and doesn't know where to turn, maybe they've found us already. I know some people have.
Okay.
And we're not like we're not waving the flag so hard right now that we're trying to make it about us. We're making it about everyone else at the moment. So I feel that we're kind of a middle ground right now.
I like that. I like that a lot. Rob, got any points?
Yeah, I do actually. So again, I base a lot of what I talk about. I use myself as the canvas because it's what I know, right? So going back a little bit, like had you stopped me in my 20s and said, hey, I see you're going through some growth. How are you kind of deal? I would have just told you I'm fine, right? Like, so I wouldn't have been receptive of any sort of help in that state. But what helped me and what prepared me for the right time, I guess, is any reaching out that my biggest mentor on this level was always my father. It still is, right? He set a stage that it wasn't just like, that sort of lip service, Shaun, of like, if you're in trouble, reach out. Like, it wasn't just the lip service. It's, let me paint you a landscape of if and when you get to the point where you yourself is starting that journey. It won't be shameful. It won't be judgment. It's, hate using this word. It's a safe space, right? To come, and when you're looking for this information, I'm waiting for you, right? And, to your point, Shaun, like in those moments, the change for me was, it wasn't that it was just, I felt safe to open up to one person. It became a safe spot for me to go seek out knowledge on these things, to start my own journey, right? So back to what you were saying, Matt, because I completely agree. There's a big element of this is you yourself has to be in a place where you're choosing for yourself to go on this journey. The other mentors just begin, it all starts to fall into place after that, right? So again, like timing, but you have to start the journey. You have to want to change something.
Yeah, right? And you know what? That's freaking empowering, man.
Mm-hmm.
Like if you can go out there and just spend a couple of weeks sniffing around for whatever flavor of the week you want to follow and be inspired by, doesn't matter what the big name is or the little name, who cares? Go find something that gets you stoked, and that'll lead you to something else, and that'll lead you to something else, and eventually you may be over here listening to us talk about this kind of stuff, and that's the kind of stuff that's getting you stoked. But more importantly, it's freaking empowering you, and you know it. You feel it. When someone says something that makes sense to you, you feel it deep inside. It's kind of empowering, man, because you get to run with it then. It's like a new freaking superpower that you knew you always had, but you were never allowed to own. But because we're talking about it out loud, like, yeah, it's a thing. Once you hear it's a thing, you just got to start playing with it, and that's what I feel we're doing over here anyway.
I like it. Matt?
Not really. I mean, I think everyone summed it up, really. I mean, yeah, I like Shaun. Shaun, you're right. Like, there's a third part, and we're doing it right now, right? Being open and allowing people to find and make their own decisions if they want to reach out, they want to listen, they want to learn, right? But yeah, I think I got nothing to say, dude. Honestly, we're good.
I like it. I like
Lost
it.
for words.
Well, no, you know what? The key point is that you're engaging on your terms, right? It's no longer someone else's terms. You're not being forced to, expose yourself to the world. You're not forced to be vulnerable. You don't have to go do anything. You're actively choosing it, and you are being intentional in the way in which you are engaging it. In that you are now, I need to go on this journey. I had a friend of mine who got told, we had to use this once when I was very young, and he got told by his dad that if everything goes south, if you guys are out partying and everything is going bad, I don't care what time it is, I don't care what happens, you call me and I'll come pick you up. No questions, no nothing, just we'll be there. And we used it once, and it did happen, right? Guy showed up, took us all home, dropped us all off sequentially, and then took his kid home, and we never heard another word of it. It was just having that backstop of, like, someone's there. And I think that is...
Did you respect him before that instant? I mean, but well before anyone had to make a call, did you know him and did you respect him?
I don't think I really knew him. Like, I was, I think, 16 or 17, okay, so as well as you can know somebody.
So the important distinction is, if you didn't know him on a deep respect or personal level, the trust was placed in someone that the group as a whole felt was the right guy for the moment.
Yes,
you hopped
absolutely.
in a car, whether you thought it was a good idea or not, because the group had determined that was the right solution based on a preordained yada yada sequence of events.
Exactly.
And so it's kind of like an interesting example as to what we've been talking about over here. If you're out there trying to figure this all out by yourself, look for a group that's kind of heading in the right direction, or look for the group that has a few people hanging out there that either you do or don't respect, but at least you may trust to some degree to jump in the car and take a ride home.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah. And that's one of the reasons why I brought that up. It really made me think about, like, this as a whole, the collective being that kind of that backstop that, like, these guys are going in the right direction. That's kind of where I want to go. Let's sit and hang out with them and see how that goes. I got a couple comments here, and then we'll do some closing thoughts, but great conversation so far, guys. Just want to appreciate this.
Dude, you're killing it from your car.
So Satch in Motion, good afternoon, everyone. Good to see you, Satch. Always happy to see you. Carl says, part of the struggle of reaching out is the fear of inconvenience. And this is a big one. And it's,
for who?
I have it actually. Well, so this is why I say it's a big one.
For who?
I think for a lot of people. You mean the inconvenience? Like, for who?
Yeah. Who's it inconvenient for?
It's the fear is inconveniencing the other person. So if I'm struggling and I'm looking like I need to get someone out, I know we say that, but I think that is that's the struggle. So I get it. And
I mean, from my perspective, don't sweat it. Maybe it's inconvenient for them to reach out to me. That's why I was clarifying. Yeah. Now I'll clear my end and say it ain't inconvenience. It ain't inconvenient. So hit me up.
I totally agree. And I say this all the time too. And I know I was talking with James Gearing from 911 Behind the Shield we were saying that one of the biggest predicators of suicide or suicide ideation comes from feeling like you're a burden.
Yeah, man.
Right. And this is one of the challenges is you're fearing the inconvenience. And I love the fact that you're right. You're absolutely right. You're not inconveniencing anybody when you're struggling, reaching out. Like, that's why we That's why we do these things. So
this one was big for me. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a big deal. It's a big subject, and it's. I mean, actually, I'll say this. Well, I don't know how much I can talk about it, but Rob and I kind of saw eye to eye on this subject to some degree in my live IG chat just before I hopped into this one, and it was on the subject of suicide. And if anyone out there has got a personal relationship with it, either in their family or immediately, and I'm not trying to make a distinction between veterans and their fellow veterans. I'm talking about your immediate family. Just to your point, Matt, you've got your family, you've got your tight friends, and then you've got your acquaintances. Well, tight is tight, and the tightest is family. And when you lose a family member to suicide, man, that's pretty personal. And so I don't hand out the casual, I ain't inconvenient to reach, hit me up. I say it because I feel it. I mean it. And I've meant it for a long time. And so my words are not empty. And I think that probably falls in line with you as well. Would that be the case, Rob?
Absolutely. So, that whole concept, I struggled with that as a younger man, this idea that my traumas and what was going on the inside, if I was sharing that to people, I'm just a burden to somebody at that point in time. It took me a really long time, to sort of sort that out in my head. And luckily, I'd learned the lesson before my brother passed away last year, but it was driven home for me through that event, right? Because, the one thing I'll tell you is that my brother was very good at, soul searching and self-improvement and all that sort of stuff. What he sucked at in that moment was he didn't reach out to anybody who he knew loved him, right? And I don't know why. But here's the thing, through that lesson, it's the only thing I wish he would have done. He could have called me at any point in time. It never would have been an inconvenience. I could be naked and hogtied out in a field. And if you put a phone up to my ear, I still would have talked to him.
That's later tonight.
Yeah.
Don't give up the plans for later. Come on now.
Dude, it's still early in the day.
Yeah. But it's incredibly important. Especially because during those moments, if you're truly going through a hard time, our brain does some really weird stuff in those moments, and it tries to keep you in this comfortable place, even if that comfortable place is terrible pain. And it starts making up all these reasons of why you shouldn't be injecting yourself into somebody's life because their life's better and you don't want to interrupt raising their kids or whatever. But I can guarantee you, somebody crosses that line of sort of unaliving themselves, for lack of better words. All people around you will ever say is, I wish you didn't think it was going to be an inconvenience, because it 100%.
Yeah. Yep. Okay. So I got a couple more quick comments here, and this is a topic for discussion for another day. So don't worry. The people that are watching, and Rob and Matt will probably talk about this another time. We will get into the whole concept of feeling like a burden and being inconvenienced. Carl does answer your question, Shaun, though. And he says, when you see your friends doing well and you don't want to inconvenience their progress on the road to recovery or how they are growing, that's more or less what I was thinking. That's exactly what you're saying.
Roger that. I figured, and you know what? A good person would think that, KH. So to think that, you're a good dude, but I'm also a good dude, and you're in an inconvenience.
Yeah. And there are points and times where you have to hold your boundaries, because that's part of it too. There's lots. My wife got kind of angry at me at a number of times when I would pick up my phone at 2 o'clock in the morning. Yeah,
I'm angry with you. So can you imagine your wife?
Right. There's been times where people have called me at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I pick up my phone and I walk around the house and I talk with them and I chat with them and I just hang out, and then I come back to bed and now she's been up twice and now she's having a rough night and so on and so forth. And I've told her, the hardest part for me would be to say, hey man, I can't right now. But that's very important too, for your own self, being able to say, now is not the right time, but here's a buddy of mine, you should talk to him, or this guy's ready for it, just talk to this person. Here's another number you can call. I can't do it right now. So that's a big part of it as well.
Yeah, good point.
So quick one, everyday carry knife and tool. Good afternoon, everyone. They state having a good group of friends is key. And this is a really big deal. Know who you're hanging out with. We've said this so many times. You can tell your future by the closest 5 friends you have, or something like that. You can tell who you are. I can't think of the quote right now, but that's
I think it
You're
goes
the
along the
sum
lines
of
of
five
everyone
people.
you know has a black leather jacket and is called Fonzie. You're in with a good crew.
that's right, exactly. Or if you get to hang out with cool people like we're doing right now and talking about cool stuff, you're in the right circle, I think, in my mind.
I think.
And the last comment I have right here is Fourth Detached came in with this one. Personally, when I feel overwhelmed, it's definitely hard to commit to reaching out to someone. Talks like these are the perfect thing to pull ideas from. The third part is definitely important.
Oh, that's legit.
There we go. That's it right there. I think that's a great spot to call her for the day. Any final thoughts from the panel, Matt? Any final thoughts for the
No,
people
not
out there on
really.
the internet?
About just quick on the inconvenience. It's more inconvenient to be pallbearer than it is to be a friend.
Mm-hmm.
That's a great point. Yep.
That's,
Rob, any final thoughts?
I'm just going to say what Matt just said is dead on, right? Like my experience is it was the ultimate convenience of my life to see my brother in a box, right? Like period. And I would say the same thing about anybody that I know, right? There is no inconvenience bigger than never getting to say hi to you ever again, right? Period.
Great point. Sean, any final thoughts?
Yeah, this was a good one, boys. I really it turned out better than I thought. I mean, from the start we had till the end to the finish. I mean, it's kind of feels almost Olympic. Not maybe gold medal, but maybe a silver. It's pretty legit. I really like this conversation. So Matt and Rob, thanks for bringing your wisdom and really appreciate the not quite fully built out conversation. So obviously it's a bit of a running joke. We'll need a part 2 or more. And Chance gets to organize that. So that's the fun part.
Hey, you know what?
Asking us.
This is the benefit of doing what I do. It is that I get to learn. I get to learn every day, which allows me to build, which allows me to grow, which allows everybody else to do the same. And we get to do that every day here on the Collective. We'll see y'all tomorrow. Hopefully not for my car. Chimo.
Chimo.
Chimo. See you guys.
See you guys.